Episode 7 of the Nemhouse podcast. Are you ready?
Whoa, 7. Amazing. Yeah, let's do it.
We're there. I am Brian Nemhauser,
I'm Rachel Nemhauser.
and we're back to continue the kind of chronological walk through our 20 plus years of being parents that have a disabled child. And our last episode was kind of a step out of the chronology. We went in and talked about some of the really delightful joys and surprises that we've had that people might not expect as a parent of a disabled child.
That actually wasn't our last episode.
It wasn't?
Our last episode was about the 3 things. It was about becoming advocates. It was about getting a diagnosis and making a decision about meds.
Oh, you know what? You're right. The reason I forgot is because somebody didn't post that episode to our Instagram channel.
Oh my God, I walked right into that one. Or you just made that up. I'm not sure which, but...
I'm not new to this, my love. So, no, seriously, yes, Rachel is right. Our last episode did cover 3 things that we wanted to go over before we got to the next chronological step in the story. Which really where we last left you chronologically was, Nate had started his school life in a special ed contained program. And then we had moved him into gen ed for most of elementary school, and then had made a decision that we'll go over again some of the reasons to move him back to a contained program heading into middle school. And so that's where we are now. So in order to kind of connect people back to that, can you share, Rach, some of the reasons again of like what made us go from what was going pretty well in a gen ed elementary school situation to where we felt like it's time for Nate to maybe go in a different direction?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there were a lot of reasons. It was a really hard decision, and I remember you and I spent a lot of time talking about it. And when I look back, I think there were 2 main things. The first is what we talked about a couple weeks ago, which is that we were starting to see Nate's personality change, starting to see him kind of withdraw inside himself. We were losing some of the outrageousness in his personality that we always loved. Well, always loved might be a stretch, but that was so fun about him. And we were starting to see more and more of him withdrawing inside himself, being on the outside of the classroom, watching other kids do things. And we just felt like he was maybe getting lost in that kind of environment. Another reason is it occurred to us that he was the only person with a significant disability in his school, the only person using an AAC device to communicate. So there was this thought that he might need more of his community around him. And then the other thing, I don't know if you remember, that happened around that time was when he had a mild violent incident on the school bus. Someone was violent towards him and he got hurt. And I remember thinking really wow, if he could get hurt at elementary school, middle school is the real deal. And so it was also about his safety.
I had forgotten that was the time that happened. We should touch on that just for a second, just because it's important for people to understand, and I think other folks that are being parents of disabled kids can relate. Kind of your worst fear. Nate comes off the bus, and why don't you describe what you noticed when he came off the bus?
Yeah, so this was in 5th grade, and he got off the school bus really upset and crying, which was completely unusual for him. And he had a big goose egg on his face and another one on his forehead. And the bus driver came off the bus after him and told us that he had a meltdown for no reason. And that the bus driver was really nice about it, but he didn't really have any information. And we ended up doing an investigation and figuring it out that a much younger kid on the bus who didn't know Nate and didn't know his unique ways of communicating had asked if he could sit with him. And Nate put his hand up to give a high five, and the kid misinterpreted it as some sort of aggressive gesture and ended up kind of hitting him in a way that he bumped his head. And that was really scary. Like it was, like you said, kind of your worst. Obviously, it was a mild injury and he was okay. I don't want to over dramatize it, but it was like a glimpse into your worst nightmare of what could happen.
Oh, I'm like still right there as you're telling that story.
Yeah.
I mean, all my my dad instincts kick in. And, I don't think people fully appreciate how, I don't know if terrifying is the right word, but how hard it is to know that your kid cannot communicate effectively and tell you what's happened
Right.
when something bad has happened. And you think about what you do with a neurotypical kid that you can have a conversation with, that if they had gotten into a fight, how much you need to work with them and talk through it and help them navigate the emotions that go along with it. All those things aren't really an option.
Yeah.
And so that was a very traumatizing experience for us as well, obviously, as for him.
Yeah.
And that was not like the precipitating event to doing this
No,
switch.
because it was one of many things that we considered when we were deciding where he should go to middle school. But it was a contributing factor.
Yeah. Yeah. And so the other thing that before we kind of get into this transition period and middle school, what it really ended up being, I think it's also worth talking about your journey during this period of time, because and it doesn't line up exactly, but like let's backtrack a little bit. But you had started to kind of have professional transition going on toward being in the disability advocacy and community area. So recap for folks a little bit of like what had happened for you around this time frame.
Yeah. Like as Nate was closing out elementary school, the last couple of years is when a different job I had. Well, okay, wait. So we already shared back when Nate was 3, 4, 5 years old, I was taking some disability advocacy classes.
Yes.
And got pulled into that community and really loved that work. But the whole time I had a whole other job working in Jewish education. As Nate was finishing up elementary school, that job wound down. And I had an opportunity to take a job in the place where I now work. But this was 10 years ago. And I started working doing parent support and doing disability advocacy and talking about disability every day. And that started right around as Nate was finishing up elementary school.
So your career had started to be related to what we had been going through and Nate's life in particular. Can you talk about like why? What about it became something that like a lot of people want to run away from that part of their life? For you, it became something you kind of ran toward. Why? Mm-hmm.
I found early on, and I said this previously, that like the time I spent with other parents of kids with disabilities was therapeutic to me. It was helpful. And I found that it was the same with learning about disability, learning about like the history of disability in our country and learning about the advocacy work that's being done. Like it helped me understand Nate, understand what was going on in our family. It helped normalize our situation so much. It got me fired up. It brought out the like social justice warrior that was already in there, and gave me a direction to point it that really made me feel good at the same time.
So the part that was energizing for you was learning about what the law actually, or like, entitles Nate or us to, and also what other people have accomplished in this area and what was possible. And it sounds like part of it was like other things in life, when there's something you kind of fear or have anxiety about, that if you can learn, dive in, all of a sudden some of that dissipates a little bit. You feel a little bit more control.
I mean, that was exactly it. It was like I learned enough to rid myself of a lot of that anxiety, to realize that so much of what I had thought and understood about disability was wrong, and so much of how I was parenting Nate was maybe misguided. Some of the ways, not so much, but some of the ways. And I think it came at the perfect time.
Well, so I mean, obviously I'm a big fan of that tie-in here with the experience, and I've been personally inspired by how much you've been able to connect something that's really important to us in our house and our family life to something that is now a professional purpose for you. And I've seen it light you up, and you've blossomed in so many ways professionally. And I don't know that you would have like, you had chances back in your old professional life of being a manager, and you were like, no way, like, I don't want to do that. But now, because you found this thing that you care so much about, you've become a director, and you manage people, and you hire people, and all these things that maybe you wouldn't have ever done if you didn't have this. So I just think it's a really cool part of the experience.
Well, I just want to turn it around for a second, because it's not just me that has found a crossover between work and Nate and his disability, right?
We'll say more.
I mean, you have had a whole career in tech, and you have this whole side gig as a podcaster, and you've always focused all the money you've made has always gone
the charity stuff
to autism and disability charities.
Yeah. I appreciate that. And yes, I'm really happy about that. I think it's way less cool than what's happened for you. I really do. Like, but yes, that's been a nice tie-in. But like, anyway, I think that's really cool. But I also think it's brought some maybe unexpected challenges too, because now you are known in the community.
Yeah.
And so when you go into your IEP meetings, like, you have a reputation, like, they, not necessarily a bad reputation, but they know, okay, this is Rachel. She works for this place. She knows this stuff. And you're also held to a different standard. And so when we're making decisions about Nate, those aren't always decisions that everybody would agree with. And so I think, I don't know if you can talk about that a little bit, where there's been some times where we've made decisions, like, for example, deciding to put him back in a self-contained program that there's folks that have very good reasons about why they think that's not the right way to go. And it puts you in kind of a challenge professionally sometimes to, like, be able to talk to people about all the different possibilities and what they might want to choose, and then make a choice for our own child that may not always line up with popular opinion.
Yeah, there have been experiences or moments of that, and the transition to special education classroom was one of them. I think for all of us as parents, and maybe especially parents of kids with disabilities, we're open to a lot of feedback. People seem to want to give us a lot of feedback, a lot of advice, a lot of, have you ever tried this? Did you ever think of that? And something that's really hard is to resist that pressure or advice, or the voice telling you there's only one right way to do something, and to do it differently. And at the end of the day, as parents, you have to decide what is best for your family, for your kid, for what you're able to take on emotionally as a parent. Like, there's a lot of things that have to go into some of these more difficult decisions.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about Nate. So he now enters back into a self-contained program, special ed, in middle school. So it's a new school. What do you remember about his mindset? Like, how did he was going from having a one-on-one aide in elementary school that was like a big part of his social structure, that person would help connect Nate with the rest of the class, and that was going into a more, in some ways, typical classroom environment where he is one of other a number of other students. but you know, the connection was a little bit more on him to be made with his peers. Is that right, or am I misremembering?
I I don't know. I can't remember like how he initially entered into that space. I think a lot of care was taken and thought was taken. I remember he went to sixth grade open house, which is when like the 100 incoming sixth graders all go to a day of things. And they just had me drop him off there and go home. And they were like, don't worry, we got it covered. And he spent the day with this 100. But I remember him kind of finding his place there. Like, I remember his personality really started to show itself at that point. And it can't be a coincidence that that came at a time where I was like becoming, and I think you were too, maybe by osmosis, more open to seeing who he was and not so worried about making him something else. But right at that time, I just started seeing this person emerge, and this person who like loved Halloween, and all of a sudden in sixth grade started insisting we host ween parties for all his friends at school. And he just, and that's when the spooky side of him came out. And this, he always had the mischievous side, but like I just started to see him, and that was really fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, he seemed again a big part of the reason for the decision for us to move him back into a contained program was socially. Like we felt there was just an it wasn't working anymore in the gen ed situation, but that we really wanted him to have some peers that he could connect with and that he could have invite them over to a party or vice versa. And it was really fulfilling to see that start to take shape and happen organically. And I think it validated for us, a lot of the choice that we had made. Am I remembering right that we also saw a pretty big leap in some of his speech around this time as well? Did he start developing, like broadening his vocabulary and you know, they were even, I think, was this when they were working on reading with him, or was that in that earlier? I don't know. There was one time where he came home and he like, there was a video we actually have him reading.
That's right.
Reading a
yeah,
book.
he was younger then.
Yeah.
I think there was like a definite maturing that went there. There was some great strides with his speech and I think they had some good expertise there in their staffing. They knew how to incorporate his speech device, his talker into his class time. A bunch of the kids in his class in those years were using AAC devices. I think there was just like great
What are
modeling.
AAC devices? People don't know.
Such a good question. It's augmentative and assistive communication, or maybe it's assistive and augmentative communication, but it's using other things besides your voice to communicate. In Nate's case, he uses an iPad occasionally.
And it would have like a app on there with different tiles that represented sounds or words, and he could tap on it, and the iPad would speak on his behalf.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I just think it was really good for him to be around other people that were learning the same things he was learning. I think that was really a good thing for him at that time.
What this was a couple of years, right? 2-3 years at middle school?
Yeah, he was there for 3 years.
3 years. What do you think the biggest changes were during that time?
I think I think he found his people.
Yes.
In that time. That's what I think happened. He found his people.
He found some connections socially that he still has and are his like dearest, you know,
Favorites.
friends and connections. And like it became the place he wanted to be all the time. Like he loved school. He looked forward to school. He looked forward to the social, like he had, you know, this one kid that would be so silly, and he ended up with, his first girlfriend, and like then they weren't girlfriend and boyfriend. Like some of the things that we never would have in a million years. I don't know, maybe you would have. I never thought would happen. I just never thought he'd even have that experience. He started having some of these typical, like, growing up, coming of age experiences. And so it felt very foundational to him starting to establish his identity.
Yeah, I think so. Like, I remember because of where I worked, we also started being able to access some resources that were out there, some like community events where he would be able to just go to the YMCA and go swimming with a group of kids for a few hours. These were things he hadn't had the opportunity to do until then. Like, he just started to be able to be an average. As he became a teenager, he started to be able to do average teenager stuff for the first time.
Is it also true, if I'm remembering right, my memory's so bad. Was this when we started doing things like swim lessons?
Yeah, it was probably around then too.
The reason I bring that up is because I think we started to raise our expectations about maybe what was possible, and give him more opportunities to try things. And I think communication became a little bit more plausible during that period of time. And so him developing allowed us to also put more opportunities in front of him. And so I think that was a helpful piece as well.
It occurs to me that another thing that was happening as Nate was 12 is that his brother was like 15 and then 16. All of a sudden he was not needing us as much. And he was, a teenager, more independent, got his driver's license, out doing his thing. It was easy. It was more natural and easier to start being able to put more attention and time into trying and experimenting with new activities and things like that.
Yeah, that all makes that all tracks and something I remember as well. So I think that was like the bulk of what I remember about that period of time that was important. And like before we get into high school and, getting close to present time, about all the things that go into transitioning out of high school. Anything else that you think was important that either was happening for us as a family or that happened for him during that time that we haven't touched on?
Yeah, Nate had his bar mitzvah.
Oh.
I had totally forgotten, and in anticipation of this episode, we didn't even remember that had happened.
Right.
But just occurred to me, and I think it was the summer between 7th and 8th grade, and I mean, it was one of the best days of our lives, and it was also one of the scariest endeavors or undertakings. But Nate had his bar mitzvah.
We should talk about that for a second, because for people that don't know, first of all, it's a Jewish rite of passage, and it takes a year, definitely 6+ months of studying, memorizing Hebrew, and like depending on what kind of intensity of religion you follow as a Jew, like it can be a very intense preparation period. And
it's generally accompanied by your parents having equally intense experience of having to plan a really big party for your entire family.
So with Nate, obviously it had to be adapted because he wasn't going to be able to read Hebrew and he wasn't going to be able to memorize stuff. And so we had a very special group of people, but I mean, I think one in particular we should call out, and the rabbi that we worked with that helped make like what was going to be reasonable for Nate. So why don't you talk a little bit about how we approached like a rite of passage? And again, we're not just going to focus on this because everyone's going to have a bar mitzvah, but I think a lot of people have different religions and different rites of passages, and it's a stressful thing to go through. So talk a little bit about how we adapted it and how we worked with our rabbi.
Yeah, I mean, a typical bar mitzvah, like you said, is like a year of practice, and it would require some skills that Nate didn't have, like being able to read and being able to read Hebrew, and being able to say a lot of prayers out loud. those were all things he couldn't do. So it would have been easy to just be like, well, I guess not. This isn't going to work for him. But like you said, we have an awesome rabbi, and we thought a lot about, well, what can he do, and what would he like to do, and what would be meaningful for him. And we did it. Like we had about 75 people come. We made sure the guest list was all people that were going to be that are really going to matter to him, and that he would be so happy to see, but not extras, because we didn't want to overload the congregation with people he didn't know. And it was so scary. Like, what's he going to do? How is he going to approach this? How is he going to handle it?
Absolutely have decided, I'm not doing this. I could have people coming in from the East Coast, from around, to come see this, to get there on that day, and for him just to be like, no, I'm not going out there. Or I'm going to like do a million other things that are going to make this impossible to actually happen. And you don't have control. And it's one of the things that's, I think, taught me a lot about parenting in general. And I think every parent probably hopefully goes through this, where you realize, oh, it's not like on TV. I don't actually get to tell them what to do and they do it. Like you don't have that control. It's really like influencing. And with him especially, it was like, okay, there's a lot of limits to how much we can motivate him to do something. So you're just doing this trust fall, and it's a deep fall.
Right.
Like the potential for what feels like real damage is significant.
But the day of, we put him in his gorgeous 5-piece suit.
Oh, God, did he look good in that red hair?
And he turned on the charm. He knew exactly what he was doing there. He absolutely adored being
center of
the
attention.
center of attention. He spent the entire hour-long service gesturing for everyone to stand up and sit down.
Yep.
For anyone who's ever been to a Jewish religious service, you do a lot of standing up and sitting down, and his job was to make sure everybody knew which they should be doing. He listened attentively when his dad gave a speech. He did silly things like scream into the microphone and try to unzip my dress in front of everybody.
And eat the entire challah.
He put the entire loaf of challah bread in his mouth. He was completely himself. Like, he wasn't pretending to be someone he was not. He wasn't trying to dull his shine. Like, he was shining, and everybody loved it. And it was just such a beautiful experience to be surrounded by his family and just have him be him in such a beautiful way.
Yeah, and one of the coolest parts, I mean, the coolest part was just watching him literally go through a rite of passage. Like, it felt like any other bar bat mitzvah where he was going through this really momentous experience with his family surrounding him and his friends and his community. And it was like, I can't believe this is actually happening. So that was the most amazing. But it also, every single person that was there talks about that day as like a memory that they'll never forget. Like that it was an experience for all of them as well. And I think transformative in a lot of ways for a lot of people. And that's, again, getting back to one of these, episode 5, delights, unexpected delights. Those moments that you get where other people are touched by, and I'm not talking about emotionally touched, but just like their lives are affected in a positive way by him and by our experience and by seeing someone overcome and someone being surrounded and loved. It almost makes everyone else feel like, okay, I can be different and know that people like have this in them to support those that are different. And I know that's probably a stretch, but I do feel like that's part of it. Like, people love to feel like there's good people in the world and that the community is welcoming. I
agree with all of that. And I had another takeaway from that, which is like, obviously we all know, like, with great risk comes great reward or whatever. Like, that was it was a huge risk. We had no idea how it would go, and it ended up being like one of the highlights of our entire parenting.
Yeah.
And I think that was a good reminder that like it's easy with Nate. It would be easy to just like no, to not take opportunities, to not take that family road trip in an RV to another country. Well, that's another
Yeah, we'll
episode.
get there.
To not like sign up for that class, to not go to that event at the school, like because you never know what could happen and things could take a bad turn. But that bar mitzvah was such an important reminder and inspiration to me that these, even though it's harder, even though it's more stressful, sometimes it is so worth it to take those risks with him.
There's a football coach who had a saying, no risk it, no biscuit.
Okay.
There you go. And I think
By biscuit, does he mean like cookie? Because
sure.
I like that.
Yeah, right? A little like shortbread.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
So yeah, that was just a huge moment and an indelible memory for sure for all involved, and a good example of how he was blossoming during this period of time. Mm-hmm. And where we'll go next is talk about how that then goes into high school, where he starts as a young adult, like that starts to happen, and expectations around, at some point work and some of the skill building and that kind of stuff. And, various attempts of how much do we work on trying to get reading to happen or writing to happen or any of these other things. There's some of those conversations we'll get to in future episodes.
I think also what comes very shortly after middle school was March 2020. And I think it will be hard to talk about the beginnings of high school without talking about the COVID and the role that COVID played.
I think we should also talk about the collarbone incident. We will. Oh
my God! We'll end the episode with that. That's another thing we could talk about because it happened in middle school, and then we could just put middle school behind us.
Oh wait, you do want to talk about that?
Yeah, No, we should leave it as a...
We'll talk about it next episode.
Oh, do you like that cliffhanger?
Yes. I do want to close this. We got another nice email, and I want to remind folks, if you are interested, we'd love to hear some of your stories or just your feedback, well wishes, anything like that. Best way to do it is actually if you find the voice memo app on your phone and you just record like a 30-second or less voice memo. Then we can play it on the podcast so other people can hear from you, maybe hear a little bit about your story, anything that you want to share, or just your favorite part of the podcast or things that you're enjoying. In this case, we got another email. This one is from Nick, and I just want to read a little bit of it. It says, hi, Brian and Rachel. Thank you for sharing your journey navigating your experience with your son, Nate. I recently subscribed to Patreon, patreon.com/nemhouse. Thank you, Nick. I'm glad to have you in the community. And he has a 9-year-old son who also has been diagnosed with autism. So he goes on and shares a lot of his experience. I'm not going to read all that because it's personal, but I did want to just acknowledge it was really helpful to hear and cool to hear your story. He says, mainly, I just wanted to say thank you for sharing your experience with your son and all the things you guys have been through over the years navigating this diagnosis. My wife and I feel at times alone in our struggle, wondering if we are going about things the right way. Wonder if all we're doing will make life easier for him eventually. And it is nice to know there are folks like you out there that have had to deal with similar challenges. Your story is inspiring, and I appreciate your willingness to share it in such an open, honest way. Hope you two have a wonderful weekend. Well, Nick, we hope you and your family have a wonderful weekend, year, and future as well. And thank you so much for taking the time to write the email. It meant a lot to Rachel and I, and it's great. It's the second time in as many weeks that we've had someone write and share about their stuff. So I think we increasingly want to find ways to weave your stories into our story and just keep the community growing. So patreon.com/nemhouse is the place to sign up. And you can also find this podcast on Spotify and Amazon Music and all that kind of stuff. And then at some point, you'll probably see some updates on the Instagram account, assuming Rachel decides that she's going to update it again. So,
well, talking about the bar mitzvah got me excited. I'll post a couple bar mitzvah pictures.
Okay. But in the meantime, thank you all for tuning in today. This has been episode 7 of the Nemhouse podcast. I'm Brian Nemhauser.
I'm Rachel Nemhauser.
And have a wonderful rest of your day.